In any community, there are people who stand as pillars of trust. They're the teachers, the coaches, the mentors, the people we entrust with our children. We expect them to be guardians and guides, shaping the future in quiet, everyday ways. For decades, one man in Detroit seemed to be the very definition of that ideal. He was a celebrated educator, a long-serving assistant principal, and a mentor who had dedicated his life to the city's youth. Parents saw a partner. Students saw a leader. The community saw a symbol of dedication. But behind that facade of respectability, a horrifying secret was festering. A secret that would eventually erupt and shatter the foundations of trust for an entire school. This is a story about the ultimate betrayal, and it forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. What happens when the very person meant to protect a child becomes the danger?
For 38 years, he was a pillar of his Detroit community, a celebrated school administrator and a mentor who vowed to guide the children under his care. He was a man trusted by parents and admired by students. But that trust was shattered by an unthinkable act against a child he had promised to help, exposing a horrifying betrayal that would leave an entire school community reeling and questioning everything they thought they knew. Please subscribe, like, or comment. Every like, comment, and sub keeps this series alive. In the sprawling city of Detroit, the people who dedicate themselves to its youth are held in special regard. They aren't just educators, they're lifelines, offering stability and hope. For nearly 3 decades, 54-year-old Jerome Younger was one of those people. By all public accounts, his career was exemplary. With 28 years of experience in education, Younger had woven himself into the fabric of the Detroit Public Schools Community District. He'd risen through the ranks to his most recent job, assistant principal at the prestigious Edward Duke Ellington Conservatory of Music and Art. This wasn't just any school. The Ellington Conservatory is a beacon of excellence, where Detroit's young artists and musicians go to chase their dreams. To be a leader, there was to be a custodian of those dreams. As an assistant principal, Younger was a face of the institution, a man whose authority was meant to be synonymous with safety. But his influence seemed to stretch far beyond the school walls. For an astonishing 38 years, he was also a core part of the Detroit Police Department's Junior Police Cadet program. This wasn't just a volunteer gig. He was a counselor, a teacher who reportedly specialized in employment skills for teenagers. Think about that. The program is designed to build trust between law enforcement and young people, to provide positive role models. And Jerome Younger was placed right at the heart of that mission. He was the man the police department itself trusted to mentor the next generation. For nearly 4 decades, he moved between these two worlds, building a reputation that seemed untouchable. He wasn't just Mr. Younger, the assistant principal. He was a community institution. He was the man who had guided thousands of students and worked hand in hand with the police. In the eyes of so many, he was the definition of a safe adult. His long and decorated resume was a source of comfort for parents. This public persona, built over decades, is exactly what makes the truth of his alleged private actions so profoundly shocking. Mentorship is a promise. It's an unspoken pact from an adult to a child that says, "I'll guide you, I'll support you, and above all, I'll protect you." When a school administrator takes a student under their wing, they step into a position of immense power and responsibility. For a young student, especially a teenager, a mentor can be a transformative force. The student at the center of this story was just 14 years old, a child on the cusp of their teenage years in the same school district where Jerome Younger was a respected leader. The specific details of how their mentorship began aren't public, but the dynamic is familiar. Maybe the student showed promise. Maybe they were struggling, and Younger offered himself as a source of support. Whatever the reason, the foundation was trust. Trust from the student who looked up to him, and trust from the family who saw the attention of an assistant principal as a blessing. And this wasn't just any mentor. This was an assistant principal. In the school hierarchy, his authority is second only to the principal. He's a figure of both discipline and support. For a 14-year-old, the assistant principal is one of the most powerful adults in their daily life. To be singled out for mentorship by that person would feel special. This is the insidious nature of grooming by someone in authority. Actions that look like mentoring, extra attention, special conversations are seen by everyone as positive and nurturing. The predator cloaks themselves in the very role that grants them unchecked access and unwavering trust. The events that would shatter this trust didn't happen in the structured environment of the school. They happened off school grounds, in a place where the lines between mentor and student would become terrifyingly blurred. The betrayal wasn't just in the act itself, but in the calculated move from the public, protected space of a school to the private, isolated space of a home. The date was Wednesday, October 8th, 2025. For most students in Detroit, it was a normal school day. But for one 14-year-old, this day would mark a horrifying turning point. The alleged assault didn't happen in a school hallway. It happened at Jerome Younger's home in Roseville, a suburb of Detroit. By allegedly bringing a student he was mentoring to his private residence, Younger is accused of deliberately stripping away every layer of protection a child is supposed to have. A school has security cameras, open doors, and hundreds of other people. A home, by contrast, is a place of absolute control for its owner, a private kingdom where a child is rendered completely vulnerable. Moving from a public mentorship to a private meeting is a classic, chilling hallmark of predatory behavior. It's a calculated move to break down boundaries, an invitation that might have sounded like a kind gesture, "Come to my house for extra help," is in reality a trap. The predator uses their position of trust to create a situation where a child feels obligated, where saying no feels wrong. A 14-year-old doesn't see their assistant principal as an equal. They see an authority figure whose requests are to be followed. Prosecutors from the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office allege that on this day, in his home, Jerome Younger sexually assaulted the minor he had pledged to mentor. The very person who was supposed to be a guardian allegedly became the aggressor. The charges filed later, first-degree and second-degree criminal sexual conduct, point to the severity of what prosecutors believe happened. In Michigan, a charge of first-degree criminal sexual conduct, especially when it involves someone in a position of authority, is among the most serious felonies on the books. It speaks to a level of violation the law considers particularly heinous. The alleged events of October 8th represent the complete corrosion of the mentorship pact, the moment the mask is said to have slipped, revealing something monstrous beneath. In the immediate aftermath of trauma, a young victim is faced with a storm of fear, confusion, and shame. When the perpetrator is someone they trusted, that storm is magnified 1,000 times over. The question of who to tell becomes an agonizing dilemma. Telling the truth means accusing a person who is widely respected. It means risking disbelief or ridicule. It's a burden no 14-year-old should ever have to bear. And yet, the 14-year-old victim did not stay silent. According to Macomb County Prosecutor Peter Lucido, the victim reported the alleged assault to the police immediately. Let that sink in. Immediately. It was an act of incredible bravery. This young person, in the wake of an alleged assault by a powerful figure in their life, found the strength to speak their truth. They refused to be silenced. Prosecutor Lucido publicly praised the victim's courage, saying, "A lot of people may not have the emotional strength to do what this young individual did." He recognized that this child's swift action was extraordinary. They became their own champion at a moment of unimaginable vulnerability. This immediate disclosure was the catalyst for everything that followed. It was the spark that brought the alleged crimes of a respected community leader out of the shadows. Without that courage, the secret of what allegedly happened in Jerome Younger's house might have stayed a secret forever, leaving the perpetrator free to potentially harm others. The victim's decision also highlights something Prosecutor Lucido later emphasized: the importance of open communication between children and their families. For a child to feel safe enough to report such a crime, they have to believe they will be heard, believed, and protected. This young person's voice, clear and unwavering, set in motion a chain of events that would strip away a 38-year-old legacy and expose a horrifying truth. The moment the victim made their report, the case of Jerome Younger turned from a private horror into an active criminal investigation. A swift report allows police to preserve evidence and get the most accurate recollections from the victim. The child's courage gave investigators their best possible chance to build a strong case. The investigation was handled by police in Roseville, where Younger's home is located, and they moved with remarkable speed. The alleged assault happened on a Wednesday. On that very same day, Jerome Younger was arrested. This suggests the initial testimony from the victim was compelling enough for police to believe they had probable cause to take him into custody. The man who started his day as a respected assistant principal ended it in a police cell. Of course, the investigation didn't stop there. Detectives began securing search warrants for his home, looking for forensic evidence, digital evidence, or anything that could corroborate the victim's account. At the same time, the case was brought to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office, the agency responsible for filing charges. The head of that office, Peter Lucido, took a personal role in the case, signaling its importance. His team reviewed the police reports and the victim's statement to determine if there was enough evidence to formally charge Jerome Younger and prove his guilt in court. The decision came quickly. The day after his arrest, on Thursday, October 9th, 2025, the prosecutor's office announced they were charging him. The wheels of justice, set in motion by the brave voice of one child, were now turning at full speed. On Thursday, October 9th, just one day after the alleged assault, Jerome Younger stood before a judge in the 39th District Court in Roseville. The man accustomed to standing at a podium in a school auditorium was now a criminal defendant in a courtroom. It was a stunning fall from grace. He was formally arraigned on two extremely serious charges. First, first-degree criminal sexual conduct, specified as occurring within a relationship of authority, a potential life felony under Michigan law. This charge is reserved for the most severe forms of sexual assault and reflects the profound abuse of trust. The second charge was second-degree criminal sexual conduct, a 15-year felony. If convicted of just the first charge, Jerome Younger could spend the rest of his life in prison. The judge set his bond at $250,000, but even if he were to make bond, his release would come with strict conditions. He would have to wear a heavy-duty GPS tether, and he was ordered to have absolutely no contact with the victim. As news of the arraignment broke, a shockwave tore through Detroit. The headlines were jarring. Detroit assistant principal charged in alleged sexual assault of minor. For parents at the Ellington Conservatory, for students who saw him in the halls, for the thousands he had mentored in the cadet program, the news was a gut punch. The man they knew was a pillar of education. The man on the news was an accused felon facing life in prison. How could this be the same person? The respected administrator was gone, replaced by the image of a man in a mugshot, his legacy erased by the horrific charges now attached to his name. The moment Jerome Younger was charged, the institutions that had once propped him up as a leader moved swiftly to cut him off. The fallout was immediate and severe. First, the Detroit Public Schools Community District, DPSCD, issued a statement confirming they had been informed of Younger's arrest. Effective immediately, he was placed on administrative leave and banned from all district property. He was instantly cut off from the world where he'd held so much power. The district confirmed the victim was a current student and the alleged assault happened at the employee's home. They also added, "We are unaware of any other alleged wrongdoing associated with this administrator, but will ensure an investigation to ensure that this is the case." It was a reassurance that also acknowledged a terrifying possibility. This might not be an isolated incident. Next to sever ties was the Detroit Police Department. Younger's 38-year association with the Junior Police Cadet Program had been a cornerstone of his public image. Now it was a source of horror for the department. In a strongly worded statement, the DPD confirmed they had extinguished all connections with him. The statement went on to say, Mr. Younger's alleged involvement in these heinous crimes stands contrary to every value of this department and the very mission of the Junior Police Cadet Program. It was a complete disavowal. The man they once partnered with was now considered an enemy of their mission. This institutional reckoning was a necessary response. It sent a clear message that the allegations were being taken seriously, but it did little to calm the fear that had taken root. The two organizations that had vouched for Jerome Younger's character for decades were now confirming the worst. Their swift actions, while appropriate, also served as a terrifying confirmation. The man they had all been told to trust was now considered a danger. When trust is broken on this scale, it leaves behind a vacuum of fear and suspicion. For the students at Ellington, the news was deeply unsettling. The school, supposed to be a sanctuary, suddenly felt unsafe. Every interaction with a trusted adult was now cast in a new, suspicious light. Who could you trust if a man at the top was accused of this? For parents, the reaction was a mix of horror and fury. They had entrusted their children's safety to this man. The betrayal was personal, forcing them to ask impossible questions. Did my child ever interact with him? Were they ever alone? Did I miss something? This anxiety was amplified by prosecutor Peter Lucido. When asked about other potential victims, he said, "Time will tell. Students or individuals that are out there may find themselves at a point that they say you know something. But until they say something, this is the only victim that we have at this time." That open acknowledgement sent a chill through the community. It transformed the case from a single incident into a potential pattern of abuse that could have spanned decades. Even Younger's neighbors were in disbelief. Reporters who spoke to people living near his home in Roseville painted a picture of a quiet, solitary man. One neighbor called him a hermit who lived by himself and rarely had visitors. This stands in stark contrast to his public-facing persona as a community mentor. It suggests a man living a deeply compartmentalized life, successfully hiding his private world from everyone, even those just a few feet away. The case forced the community into a painful self-examination, exposing the fragility of the systems meant to protect children and highlighting how easily a predator can weaponize a good reputation. With Jerome Younger formally charged, the case entered the slow, methodical grind of the criminal justice system. The arraignment was just the first step on a long road. The next major milestone is his probable cause conference, set for Wednesday, October 22, 2025. This is a hearing where the prosecution and defense discuss the case, and it's an opportunity for a plea bargain to be considered. If no agreement is reached, the next step is the preliminary examination, scheduled for the following week on Wednesday, October 29th. This is like a mini-trial. The prosecutor must present enough evidence to convince a judge that there's probable cause a crime was committed and that Younger is the one who committed it. This will likely involve testimony from the arresting officers and, most critically, may require the 14-year-old victim to testify in court for the first time. The defense will have the right to cross-examine all witnesses. At the end of that hearing, if the judge finds there is enough evidence, the case will be bound over to the circuit court for a full trial. All the while, Jerome Younger remains under the strict conditions of his bond. If he can't post the $250,000, he stays in custody. If he is released, he'll be under constant GPS monitoring. The path to justice is rarely swift, demanding patience and resilience, especially from the victim. For the community, these court dates are the next chapters in a story they are watching with bated breath, hoping the legal system provides the one thing Jerome Younger is accused of so devastatingly betraying: protection for a child. The details of this case are incredibly disturbing and highlight the courage it takes for a survivor to come forward. If this story has impacted you, please take a moment to hit the like button. And to stay informed on this case and others that expose the truth, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Your support helps continue this important work. The case of Jerome Younger is a story about the darkness that can hide behind a veneer of respectability. It's a chilling chronicle of how a 38-year career mentoring youth could stand in stark opposition to the alleged crimes he committed in private. The life he built, a life of trust and leadership, was undone in a matter of hours, not because of a single mistake, but because of the alleged calculated betrayal of an educator's most sacred duty, to protect a child. His name, once a symbol of guidance in Detroit, is now a byword for a horrifying breach of trust. But this story is also, and more importantly, a testament to the immense bravery of one 14-year-old. In the face of a terrifying ordeal, this young person chose to speak. Their voice, clear and immediate, cut through decades of curated reputation and forced a reckoning. Prosecutor Peter Lucido called them a champion, and he was right. Their courage is a powerful reminder that the truth has a power all its own. As this case moves through the courts, an entire community is left to pick up the pieces, forced into a painful but necessary conversation about vigilance and about believing children. The path to justice has just begun, but the victim's courageous first step has already shone a light so bright that no shadow can ever truly extinguish it.